Hi, it's been a little bit since Empyrean Ilynav has been released, and as per what I promised in my Festive Eda video, and what I was always going to do anyways, I wanted to give some updated thoughts on the new character and how she's been performing for me. Without further ado, let's get into it. So this is the current build that I have for my Ilynav, and whether or not she's an attainable state or in an attainable state or not, I do think that the build that I have on her has been performing pretty well. Now, I have seen some variations of builds out and about. I've seen some protection set. I've seen some no crit damage builds, but I actually do think that Empyrean Ilynav does do a decent amount of damage, especially with their S3. And given that, and also something that I kind of missed from the last or my initial impressions video of Empyrean Ilynav, like given the fact that she pushes up quite frequently, it does kind of feel like her S3 or putting damage into her S3 is quite nice. Now, I do have a couple concerns about the character, but let me come out and say, and I guess completely address all the things that I definitely forgotten or miscalculated. This character definitely does impact the cleave meta, or what people are going to be using for or regarding cleave in general right now, and let's just kind of address, I guess, that to begin with. Formerly, I was not aware of how the penetration resistance would work. I kind of just thought that since it was 30%, if you defense broke something, like you'd have enough. But after doing some testing, apparently the effective... Oh. Someone followed while I was recording the video. In any case, thank you for the person that followed randomly. But in any case, the amount of penetration that you actually get from Ilynav is actually pretty impactful. And it does mean that it's a lot tougher, actually, in most cases, to cleave through an Ilynav. Now, I do want to make it clear that after fighting against a bunch of Ilynavs in Arena especially, if you do have a character like Ludwig, and if you do have someone like Rand defense breaking, you can definitely still one-shot a team, even with Ilynav on board. However, keep in mind that this is on top of characters like Dragon Bride Senya, and depending on what you're fighting against, sometimes trying to one-shot a team like this, or sometimes if you're fighting someone like Empyrean Ilynav, and then you have someone like Moonlight Haste who's on proof, or if you stack debuffs enough, like you can't reliably kill a lot of these teams the way that you used to be able to, just by soul burning and then allowing Ludwig specifically to just kind of do his own thing. And I think that's where this kind of conversation needs to go, and that's regarding Empyrean Ilynav and how she's kind of been designed to specifically counter Ludwig specifically. Now, of course, again, what I forgot about earlier was that not only do you gain 40% combat readiness, assuming that Ludwig decides to S3, the penetration is pretty impactful. Now, formerly, I wasn't really sure about what artifact would be really good on her, and unfortunately, even presently, I have no idea what her best artifact is either. I've seen 3F, I've seen Holy Sack, and I think Holy Sack feels a little bit strong, to be honest, just in general, because a lot of people will try to cleave you, and if you come back and you're able to clap back at the person that or tried to one-shot you, basically, you do a load of damage. And for that, or in that case, I think that Holy Sack is quite impactful. But Holy Sack, and the reason why I bring it up, kind of also, I guess, highlights or kind of is like the cherry on top with this sort of playstyle where if a knight or a knight character in general gets to revive against a cleave team, well, I've seen this one before. A character like Abyssal Euphine, a character like Empyrean Ilynav, usually they'll do enough damage to kind of ruin your life or to make things really annoying. And of course, since Empyrean Ilynav has like the passive and she does a little bit of a little bit of damage, and she can also put up Indomitable, if you do manage to or aren't able to kill the Empyrean Ilynav and she's able to give off the defense buff to the team, that's kind of cringe, and you're probably in a really bad spot with cleave. Now, again, I do want to mention that although I did mention earlier that there are people that have been running her primarily on protection set, I do want to really advise you guys to check out the damage build if you can. Now, Holy Sack, of course, is one good artifact that I just mentioned, but if you want to do 3F, or even, I mean, literally any of the artifacts that you want, Mature Sunglasses, any of these builds that you want to try and accentuate her as a DPS, I'd also encourage you to try that out. Keep in mind, however, that most of our testing right now is coming from Arena and Guild War because she's not out yet. But to be fair, and even with the Festive Eda, and I forgot to mention it there, but given that this is towards the end of the season, and although Festive Eda is playable, Empyrean Ilynav is not, and since a lot of the testing that you'll be able to do for Empyrean Ilynav will be against like bots or AI, a true test will never really be able to be done with Empyrean Ilynav in the near future, since we're about to head into preseason and then no one tries seriously during that time, and then right now it's only Arena and Guild War. So in any case, this is about as good of a reading as we'll get right now in terms of testing. And for what I can tell right now, I definitely think that stacking buffs on her is kind of fun, especially because you can obviously kind of overwhelm people with like defense buffs, like the Indomitable buff, like you have anti-crit. It really makes Empyrean Ilynav quite annoying to cleave with or cleave against. And I've seen like a number of people, even in mocks, try to like really try to ram their heads into this Empyrean Ilynav character, and it just does nothing. Characters like Cannaaaa, Gala, all perform way worse when Empyrean Ilynav is on the field. And that's kind of the reason why she was designed, obviously. But I do want to talk about the fact that it does feel at times that despite her, you know, having a decent amount of damage and her also having, of course, this insane passive on her, if you are, for whatever reason, not able to kind of swing things drastically in your direction after her initial S3, this S1 does a decent amount of damage, but the oomph is not nearly as impactful as some other injury characters or some other characters that you may have on field. Nowadays, with epicseven, a lot of the damage dealers that you see on field are or have to be super impactful or game changing, so much so that they almost have to either one shot the whole team or one shot the major carry on the enemy team for them to be worth picking. Now, you might be familiar with characters, of course, like Navy Captain Landy, and ignore my build because I have a different kind of Navy Captain Landy build right now for my own purposes. But a character like Navy Captain Landy, Dragon Bride Senya, Cannaaaa, Knockwall, Death Dealer Ray, all these characters that I'm referring to are all characters that either have insane 1v4 potential or they kind of, you know, they can't die. Like, and for whatever reason, since that's now the standard for DPS and the slot that we're talking about here with Empyrean Ilynav, it's a little bit difficult for me to say whether or not she'll be super impactful in non-cleave or non-aggro heavy teams. Now, to be fair, she'll probably still have a great presence, since a lot of times most people will be trying to pair someone like Ambitious Tywin alongside in a what's her name, ML Poly basically, and Cannaaaa to make things really easy for Cannaaaa to just one shot. But I don't think that's nearly as easy to do now, especially because we have third grip protection, and just in general, people will be pairing Empyrean Ilynav all over the place, or be putting Empyrean Ilynav all over the place on defense. But just keep in mind that if someone, you know, just decides to run Laya and Knockwall or Death Dealer Ray instead into Empyrean Ilynav, well, unfortunately, it doesn't really matter if you have pen resistance, because injury is now Empyrean Ilynav's own worst enemy. Now, again, I did mention that she might not have quite as quite as insane impact in standard matches as some of the other injury characters, and you might be wondering who I'm referring to. Well, of course, I kind of just mentioned one, and I'm sure you're familiar with the other. It's Urban Shadow Shu and, of course, Death Dealer Ray. Now, Death Dealer Ray, of course, is one of the most disgusting characters that have ever been buffed and released, and for good reason. He has a bunch of things in his kit that revolve around injuring. Depending on what artifact you have, you can cleanse 2 debuffs, you put up an effectiveness buff, you get to, like, it's ridiculous, right? But even besides that character, we also have Shu, who not only provides a decent amount of injury on her S3, but she's also a nuker, and depending on what build you have on Shu, you can be on ER, and you don't even have to touch certain characters. Like, you can kill like a character like Aiden just by being in the same presence as them. Like, just hitting enemies on Aiden's team will cause Aiden to also lose health. And that's where I think I would probably say Empyrean Ilynav's biggest issue is. It's the what happens if you don't win instantly, like off of Empyrean Ilynav just being in the match. And truth be told, while I do definitely respect or appreciate having injury, it's definitely not the same as giving your team like team-wide speed buff and also injuring and also having like an insane nuke on S3. It definitely doesn't beat the team-wide sleep potential from a character like Death Dealer Ray. And again, to be fair, she's definitely more impactful, I'd say, than a lot of the other standard characters, and she's definitely not bad or unpickable in standard. But just keep in mind that when you're trying to pick this character and you're trying to figure out why she's good, you know, she's competing with characters like, again, Lionheart Sermia, Ambitious Tywin, Angel of Light, Last Rider Crow. And so in that case, you have to kind of value her in the general sense. Like, will picking this character make you strong against all sorts of team compositions, the way that picking someone like Angel of Light might be strong? Or are you going to, I guess, get punished for overcommitting and picking this character in, I guess, in standard and her not being good? And you kind of understand what I'm trying to refer to here. If you guys are anyone that has dealt with cleave, you understand why sometimes picking, you know, the most like versatile character in the game, someone like Conqueror Lilius, may not be that helpful against cleavers, because then a cleaver will just pick Rand and then you instantly die. But in any case, rambling aside, I do think, again, she's pretty good. I would definitely say that she's on the stronger side against cleavers, probably one of the best characters against cleavers right now, outside of if they decide to seal you with someone like ML Luna. But again, a lot of people are banning ML Luna anyways, so it doesn't matter. But overall, I'd probably give her a 9 out of 10. I think she's exceptional. Most of the time that you play into her, you don't even know what build she's on. And the last time you weren't able to figure out what build an anti-cleave character was on, or you weren't able to predict what an anti-cleave character was doing before, well, we had Albedo, and that character is disgusting. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video, though, guys. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to check out the rest of my socials, my videos. Again, I apologize. Definitely was a bit of a misread on Empyrean Ilynav initially. Thank you for correcting me and giving me feedback for that on the video. But yeah, thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.